Well, hey there, my friend. I'm Abby from Abbi Collections, and I'm super excited to tell you all about the new Cricut Watercolor marker and brush set today. So I absolutely love working with watercolors, but to be honest, I am not a traditional artist, so it's quite the struggle for me to create something that looks good as an end result. But with this new Cricut Watercolor brush and marker set by Cricut, my Cricut helps me with the details of the drawing, and then I can blend the colors and really create something that's one of a kind to me. Cricut has created these watercolor brush and marker sets for the full-size machine, and they've also created a set for the Cricut Joy as well. So whether you own the Cricut Joy or you own the full-size machine, you'll be able to enjoy these new watercolor markers and brush sets. You can use these markers with the Cricut Watercolor paper cards. They come in several different sizes, and you can use them on the full-size machine card mat as well as the Cricut Joy card mat. I'm going to go over all of my tips and tricks that I have discovered using these new watercolor markers by Cricut, and I'm also going to help you learn how to search for the best images to get the best results possible for these new watercolor marker sets. So let's go ahead and get started with this project.
All right, so I want to talk to you about how to set up images and design space for the new watercolor markers. And I also want to walk you through what images to choose and to look for in the Cricut Access Image Library when you're working with these. Of course, you can always upload and play around with using your own images too, so that is an option for you. And you can use the upload button that Cricut provides for you over here in the design panel. Okay, so I have a couple examples on my screen here that I kind of have worked on designing, and I'm going to be placing these onto the watercolor cards. I am going to use my full-size machine, but this works with the Cricut Joy too. They have the watercolor markers for the Cricut Joy, as well as the cards that will fit the Joy card mat. So know that whether you have a full-size machine or the Cricut Joy machine, you can absolutely use these watercolor markers from Cricut. All right, so a couple of these designs here, like this thank you card design, get well soon, and happy birthday one, I just designed these with a few different elements from the images tab over here. So let's go ahead and take a look. I'm gonna click on images, and a good place to start can be plugging in the keyword watercolor markers, and just hit enter. And you'll see a few designs right off the bat that'll work really well for these new watercolor markers. For example, all these florals you see here are great, but notice first with these watercolor marker images, these specific florals here, notice how there are more than one color present in each design, but that the colors are not directly stacked or overlapping one another. And the reason that that is important is because when we go to blend our watercolors with our water brush, we don't want the colors running into each other and then creating basically one big hot mess of color that doesn't actually look like the original color we were going for. So let's say maybe I'm looking for a rainbow. And let's take a look at a couple of these rainbow options here. So this one here that has these pinks and reds and yellows, I wouldn't use this specific image for the watercolor markers because the colors are running directly into each other. There's no white space between them, and that's going to be very challenging to blend that without completely like having the colors run into one another. But if we scroll down a bit here, something like this rainbow, or potentially even that one. This one for sure would be great. This one, because there's white space between all of these colors here. So we can use multiple different watercolor markers with these colors, but the colors are not running into one another. So we have space to blend. So I just want you to think about that when you're browsing images for your watercolor markers. So I'm going to go back to my canvas here, and I just want to show you a demonstration. So let me group these together so that they're out of our way for a moment. A couple other things going on my screen here. I have a guide. So I have the S40 card size, and then I also have R40 and some of the other sizes. All I did here is I grabbed a shape from the shapes panel, and then I typed in the size of that card. So the S40 card is 4.75, it's a square. And then I changed it to a guide. And what this is going to let me do is it's going to help me with my scaling as I design my cards before we go to the cut screen. So something really handy to be able to do. I'm going to work on another one here. So here's another square, and I'm going to bring in one of the other floral images. So I'm going to take this watercolor floral image here, add it to my canvas, and I'm going to shrink this down a little bit. For right now, I'm just going to set it there. I'm going to grab my text tool and I'm going to type out, this is my own font. So I wanted to test this with system fonts to see how it went. And of course, Cricut has lots of their own fonts and fonts that you can change to the writing style and all of that. But I wanted to try it with a system font. So I'm going to do Happy Birthday, just like I had earlier. And we're going to move this over. Let me zoom in here a little bit. I'm gonna advance and ungroup to lines so that I can kind of scale this a little bit to my preference and position it where I want. Okay, and then let's bring it over here and see how it's getting situated in our card using our guide here, which is very handy. All right, so I think that looks pretty good. I feel like it's missing a little something. I'm going to duplicate this using the duplicate at the top, and then I'm gonna ungroup. And I'm going to pull apart some of these. So I'm going to actually take this flower here and I'm going to rotate it, just clicking and dragging at the corner here to use my rotation handle. Use my contour tool on the yellow here and hide everything but the little circle in the contour function. And put that over here. I'm also going to use my contour function on this. I'm going to hide all contours except for one of these leaves. And pull it in like this. So I just duplicated the little design I made down there in the right corner, and I'm gonna scale it a little smaller here and just add another little flower right up there. And I think I'm gonna change the colors. We need to set all of these to the watercolor marker. So we do need to change all of the operations to pen, and then I'm gonna change it to the color that I want with the watercolor marker. I'm going to do this one as a purple, and I'm going to do this one. I'm going to select the green here. We're going to change that as well. So the setup does take a little bit of time, but make sure you save your project and then you won't have to do this again in the future. And then we have our Happy Birthday here. So I'm going to select both of those. We're going to change that to pen as well, and also to the marker. And I'm going to change it to, I think we might actually just keep it black, and we'll do sort of a black script. So I'm going to change that to black, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to weld it because I want to eliminate those overlapping cut lines when it's going from like the A to the P and to the Y and all of that stuff. All right, so you might notice I didn't change these pieces here to watercolor markers, because what I want to show you is that you can mix different operations. So we can draw with our watercolor markers, and then we could also leave certain pieces on this to do cutouts, and then we could place an insert behind it to create sort of a layered effect with our watercolors. So it's really cool to do. I've done it a couple times already, and it works really well. All right, so I'm going to pull my guide off here. The guides will automatically disappear when you go to the cut screen, but I like to pull it off so that I can click and drag and then attach all of this, because we need it to hold its placement just as it is here on the screen, and I don't need these extra little pieces anymore, so we're just going to delete those. And you can either just leave the guide or delete it if you want. It doesn't really matter because it won't cut out when you go to the cut screen. I'm using the Explore 3 in this case, but like I said, you can use any of the machines because they are compatible with the Joy and with the full-size machines. So I'm going to select on the card mat here and click confirm, and I want to move this to the same card mat. Cricut's separating it because of some of the color cutouts I have going on here, but I'm going to go ahead and just move it to this mat here. And Cricut does a pretty good job of centering it, but if you need to shift anything, you can always do that here on the screen. It looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and click continue now and connect to my Explore 3 machine. And then we need to set our base material. So go ahead and click on Browse All Materials, and to find the watercolor one, you just type in watercolor, and you'll see the heavy watercolor paper, 140 pound. This is the one that you want to select here. And you could also place watercolor paper just onto a regular mat if you want to use the pens that way as well, or use the markers that way as well. So I'm going to select this and click done, and let's go ahead and load our watercolor markers into clamp A and get started with this craft. Alright, so I have my different watercolor cards here. Like I said, they do come in different sizes. Here are my watercolor pens. These are for the full-size machines. They also make them for the Cricut Joy, and they make the Cricut Joy cards as well. So don't worry, if you have the Joy, you can still enjoy these markers. Alright, so I'm going to start with the S40 cards here. And I'm just going to select one of these cards. And we're going to open this up and slide it into our card mat here. So So once you slide that in, just fold it over and press it down. If your mat's been well used a couple times, you can always use a brayer tool to roll it on. I'm gonna actually be doing 2 cards at once here, so I'm also gonna put one on this side. All right, I'm gonna push this underneath the guides here against the rollers and press the double arrow flashing button to load our card mat into our machine. I'm using the Explore 3 here, but you could also use the card mat with like the Maker 3, the Explorer 2. Any of those are gonna work with this card mat as well. Design Space is telling me to load the orange watercolor pen. You'll see this little icon on your watercolor marker, and this is telling you basically to push this into your machine until this disappears, and you'll know it's inserted correctly. So I'm gonna open up clamp A. We're gonna put the watercolor marker in, and again, looking at that little icon, press it down until it disappears inside of clamp A, and then close it. Wiggle it a little bit just to make sure that it is sitting in there and nothing's popping up. Go ahead and press the flashing play icon, or it might look like a Cricut icon, to proceed with the cut and the draw operation that we set our machine to do here. All right, so the orange is done. Do not unload your mat, just remove the pen from, or the marker from clamp A. And then my Cricut Design Space here on my screen is telling me that I need to put the black in next. So I'm gonna open up the black watercolor marker, and we're gonna place it in the same way, pushing it down, closing clamp A, and then press that flashing go button to proceed with the rest of the drawing. Right, and we're just gonna keep repeating this with all of the prompts from Design Space. So next for me, it's telling me to do green. So I'm going to remove the black, replace the lid, put that right there so we don't lose it, open up the cap on this one, press it down again, and close clamp A, and press go. Okay, so our watercolor marker drawings, and if you have any cut lines that you're gonna do, those are done. I have a double arrow flashing button now, so it's telling me I can unload my mat, and everything is complete. I'm gonna remove my marker here and replace the cap. Make sure you do that so it doesn't dry out. I'm gonna remove these from the mat now. Now the card mat's a little bit more difficult to work with, but I do recommend flipping the mat over here and gently, as carefully as you can, curling the mat slightly back to lift this away without curling your paper. So first I just want to show you a couple of cards I've already done here so you can kind of see where this is going. So with this particular card here, I did my watercolors, and this was just written on with a calligraphy pen. I didn't actually do watercolors for this part. I just typed out the text and I wrote on with a calligraphy pen using my Cricut machine. Same thing here, watercolors and calligraphy pen, but the difference is if you see the little shiny metallic pieces there, that is a metallic cutout I did of cardstock, and I placed it on the back here so that I incorporated a cut element where we layered something with our watercolors and with a calligraphy pen. So you can really mix operations. So to spread out our watercolors here and blend them, we're going to need to use the water brush that comes with the watercolor marker set from Cricut. So it comes with a cap here that you'll first take the cap off, and then you'll be able to unscrew the top here. And once it's unscrewed, you'll fill this with some water. So don't overfill it, but just fill up the entire base there, and then screw this back on. Make sure the lid is good and on. You don't want to accidentally spill water all over your design. So check it and make sure it's good. I like to have a scrap piece of watercolor paper on the side. If you have maybe a card you messed up or something like that, and you just want to use one of the card inserts, I like to have this on the side, because what I'll do is I'll push a little bit with the brush to get color off, and you also want to give the plastic area a bit of a squeeze to get the water to work down into the tip. So I like to do that and then check that it's flowing before I actually start doing my design. You can't see it on camera probably, but there is water coming when I brush it now. So I know the tip is good and wet, and we're ready to go. Okay, so I'm just going to set this aside because I might need to wipe that a few times through the design. I'm going to start with the thank you part right here. I'm going to come in here, and what you want to do is you want to make sure you're pulling the color from the outside of the border in to where you want to fill it. So use that as, like, you know, if you're filling in an outline, or, you know, you're tracing a drawing and then you're coloring inside that drawing, that's what you want to focus on here. If you find you have too much water on your tip, again, just use that spare piece of watercolor paper on the side to sort of wipe it off, and then just very slowly start pushing that watercolor to fill in those spaces. Now, depending on how intricate your design, this may go really fast or this may take a little bit longer. When you're first doing this, as you get a feel for things, definitely go slow. So it's better to go slow
than it is to try and rush it. So put on some music in the background, your favorite show, and just enjoy painting it, okay? It's really fun and therapeutic, and I'm gonna go around and fill in all of this color here. And I'm just pulling it from those watercolor markers. Now, a lot of people ask, do you have to do this right after your Cricut has drawn it? The answer is no. I've waited a full 24 hours before actually spreading the color, and it still spreads. You might have to get the brush slightly wetter initially just to get things moving, but it still works just fine. So you don't have to do this right off the machine if you want to draw a bunch and then have maybe someone else or your kids work with pulling the color in here and enjoying the watercolor painting aspect of this. Then you could absolutely do that and then do it on another day. I recommend working with the same color on all of your card designs first before moving to the next color, because you're going to want to really wipe that tip off to get any excess color off before you transition to, say, working with a green or something like that. So I recommend working with all one color. I'm going to complete my other purples up here. Now, one thing I want to note with the tip here of our design, the lighter you are, the finer the point it will be to spread. The more pressure you put, the fuller the brush will become and will make a larger spread of your watercolor. So if you're trying to work very, in small sections and use a very fine tip, make sure you're holding it upright and you're going very light on the pressure. And if you increase the pressure, then it will increase the stroke of the brush. I like to kind of fill all of mine in, but if you want to leave like some fading areas, that's perfectly fine. This is up to your artistic interpretation at this point. As far as dry time goes, I recommend 24 hours, but everything was dry to the touch for me in general in about 60 to 90 minutes. So just don't touch anything for a little bit to let it get that initial set. Things also will define themselves a little bit more as the watercolor sets. Now, as we move on to our purple and our green, you're going to want to kind of flush the brush out a little bit. So I recommend gently squeezing it at the plastic part and then kind of just getting that color off. Go back and forth. And you can rinse it also underneath the sink, but I'm kind of just rinsing it with the water flowing through the tip, just so that I don't see any excess color coming off. And it's looking pretty good there. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the purple now. And I'm going to kind of get some of that color to come out of the edges here. You want to make sure you're holding the pen very upright and very light on the pressure if you need to work in very fine, in a very fine line. If you're wanting a thicker, bolder line, you can angle it a little bit more and then add pressure, and that'll create a thicker line. Okay, so I'm going to definitely be doing light pressure here with the happy birthday area because I don't want it to bleed too much. If you feel like you have too much water on your brush, just wipe it off without squeezing it, and that will help. When you're ready to move on to another color, just kind of work it out of the brush tip by pushing some water through it, and then you can move on to another color. So I'm going to start with this one next and just pull the color from the edges here. So for the ones that we did the cutouts with the leaves there, I'm going to go ahead and just flip this over and add a little bit of glue. You could also use some scrapbooking tape or something like that. It's just barely art glue here, my precision tip. And I'm going to place this insert. I just cut this out to match the size of the card here.
since we added those cutouts, we have those really pretty shimmer effects. Now it's created a layered design there with our watercolor design. It's very pretty. So here's a close look at all of our designs. We had this one here. This was written with a calligraphy pen, watercolors, and then I added the back inside there to create those cutouts. We have this one, which I think this one is probably my favorite. We were able to use a calligraphy design in Design Space to create sort of a hand lettering watercolor effect, and then we added our watercolor flowers, and then we also added our cutout inside here to create that effect. This one's just straight watercolors with a calligraphy pen, and then this one is similar to the other happy birthday one with that layered effect. And then we have our happy birthday rainbow one here, and this one was an example where we had a lot of bleed going on, so know that that's the look you'll get if colors are very close together, and that can be a positive thing or a negative thing depending on the image you are working with. Which one of these designs is your favorite, and what questions do you have for me about working with these new watercolor markers by Cricut? I'd love to know. Leave me a comment below and I'll be happy to help you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye for now.